There is a particular kind of ache that doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up late at night when you scroll through your phone. It appears at weddings, promotions, baby announcements, housewarming parties. It whispers when someone your age says, "I just bought my second property," or "I finally made partner," or "we're expecting." And suddenly, without meaning to, you feel it. I'm behind. It's not just jealousy. It's not even simple comparison. It's a deep, unsettling fear that you have somehow missed the timeline, that everyone else received a manual you didn't get, that life is a race and you've been running in the wrong direction. Psychologically, the feeling of being behind is rooted in something very human: social comparison. From early childhood, we learn who we are by measuring ourselves against others. As children, we compare grades; as teenagers, popularity; as adults, careers, relationships, income, milestones. Our brains are wired to evaluate our position within a group because historically, belonging to the group meant survival. Being excluded meant danger. But in modern life, this instinct gets amplified and distorted. Social media has turned comparison into a constant, curated spectacle. You are no longer comparing yourself to the handful of people in your immediate environment. You are comparing yourself to hundreds, sometimes thousands, of highlight reels. Promotions without the burnout, engagements without the arguments, fitness transformations without the relapses. You see the polished outcome, not the messy process. And the brain does something subtle but powerful. It treats these images as data. It calculates. It measures. It concludes, often incorrectly, that you are falling short. The pain of feeling behind is rarely about the actual milestone. It's about identity. When you see someone else ahead, your mind asks, what does that say about me? If they have achieved that by now, and I haven't, what does it mean about my intelligence, my discipline, my worth? This is where conditional self-worth quietly enters the picture again. If you have internalized the belief that your value depends on your productivity or achievements, then timelines become verdicts. A delayed promotion feels like proof of inadequacy. Being single at a certain age feels like evidence of being unlovable. Living with parents longer than peers feels like failure. Often these beliefs were shaped long before adulthood. Perhaps you were praised primarily for accomplishments. Perhaps your family emphasized stability, status, or prestige as markers of success. Perhaps comparisons were common in your household. Look at your cousin. Your friend already got into medical school. Even if these comments seem small, they can leave lasting impressions. As a child, you may have learned that approval came with performance. So as an adult, when your life doesn't match the imagined timeline, it triggers more than disappointment. It triggers shame. Shame is different from guilt. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. Feeling behind often activates shame because it feels personal and global. It's not just, I haven't reached that goal. It becomes, I am less than. And yet, the concept of being behind assumes that life follows a universal schedule. It assumes there is a single, correct sequence of events. But when you look closely, that schedule is largely cultural. In some societies, marriage by a certain age is expected. In others, career establishment takes priority. In some families, financial independence by 22 is non-negotiable. In others, multi-generational living is normal and valued. The timeline you feel pressured by is often inherited, not consciously chosen. There's also a cognitive distortion at play called the spotlight effect. We tend to overestimate how much other people are evaluating us. When you walk into a reunion feeling behind, you may assume everyone is judging your job, your relationship status, your salary. In reality, most people are preoccupied with their own insecurities. The person who seems ahead may privately feel behind in a different domain. The friend with the perfect marriage may envy your freedom. The colleague with the high salary may feel emotionally empty. But comparison rarely accounts for invisible struggles. It compares your internal reality to someone else's external presentation. Another layer to this feeling is grief. Yes, grief. When you imagine where you should be by now, you are grieving an idealized version of your life. You are grieving the story you thought would unfold. Maybe you imagined being married by 30, or financially secure by 25, or emotionally healed by now. When reality doesn't match that imagined future, there is a quiet mourning, and instead of acknowledging that grief, many people convert it into self-criticism. It feels easier to attack yourself than to sit with disappointment. The impact of constantly feeling behind is profound. It can create chronic anxiety, as if time is slipping away and you are racing to catch up. It can lead to impulsive decisions, entering relationships out of fear, changing careers without reflection, overspending to signal success. It can also cause paralysis. When the gap between where you are and where you think you should be feels too wide, you may freeze entirely. Relationships also suffer. If you feel inferior to peers, you may withdraw socially. You might avoid gatherings where achievements are celebrated. You may downplay your own progress or struggle to feel genuinely happy for others. Underneath that withdrawal is often fear of being exposed, compared, or pitied. But here is something essential to understand. Progress is not linear. It never has been. Life unfolds in cycles, detours, setbacks, and reinventions. The person who appears a crisis in the next, the career that looks impressive at the 30th of May, feel hollow at 40. The timeline you envy may not actually fit your deeper values. Healing begins when you gently separate your worth from your timing. Ask yourself, if no one were watching, if there were no social comparison, what would I genuinely want? Not what looks impressive, not what would silence critics, but what feels aligned with who I am. Sometimes the feeling of being behind is a sign that you are measuring yourself against goals that were never truly yours. You may be climbing a ladder that leans against the wrong wall. It also helps to zoom out. The brain naturally focuses on short-term gaps. But your life is not a quarterly report. It is a decades-long narrative. Many people who feel behind in their 20s or 30s later realize they were building foundations, emotional insight, resilience, clarity that became invaluable later. There is also a developmental truth we rarely acknowledge. Everyone matures at different rates in different domains. You might be financially behind but emotionally ahead, or professionally established but still learning relational skills. Growth is uneven. It does not move in synchronized steps. When you feel behind, instead of attacking yourself, try becoming curious. What exactly do I believe I'm lacking? Is it security, love, recognition, freedom? Often the milestone itself is symbolic. A house might represent stability. A marriage might represent belonging. A promotion might represent validation. Once you identify the underlying need, you may discover alternative paths to meet it. Stability can come from community and savings habits, not just property ownership. Belonging can come from friendships, not only romantic partnerships. Validation can come from internal pride, not just titles. And perhaps most importantly, practice self-compassion. Imagine speaking to yourself the way you would to a friend who feels left behind. You would not tell them they're a failure. You would remind them of their strengths, their context, their unseen efforts. You would acknowledge how hard it is to navigate invisible timelines. The truth is, you are not behind. You are on your path. It may not resemble the one you expected, but that does not make it inferior. It makes it uniquely yours. Life is not a synchronized race. It is a deeply personal unfolding. The discomfort you feel right now is not proof of inadequacy. It is an invitation to re-examine what success means to you, to redefine timelines, to detach your identity from external markers. There is still time, not in a rushed, panicked way, but in a spacious human way. Time to pivot, time to grow, time to discover that fulfillment often arrives through self-understanding, not speed. You are allowed to move at your own pace. You are allowed to bloom later than others. You are allowed to build slowly. The fact that someone else is in a different chapter does not mean your story is lacking. It simply means it is still being written.